Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me today. And it's a pleasure to welcome Paul Sallaway from Optics Digital. Thanks for joining us, Paul.
Hi, Lee. Good to see you again.
Yeah, thank you. So, Paul, there's been a lot of press about privacy lately. There's been Optus and some health funds, Medibank Private, AHM. It's really risen to the front of our attention at the moment. And it'd be great to, as optometrists, we also need to be aware of these privacy issues on our website. So it'd be great to have a chat about our websites and do they meet the compliance benchmarks today?
Whenever the topic of compliance in anything, in any aspect sort of comes up, I think a lot of people, they kind of their eyes roll back and tune out a bit because it's not the sexiest of topics. But I think if you are doing business, it's like death and taxes. It's an unavoidable thing that we all have to consider. Um, because there are some pretty significant consequences of falling foul of compliance regulations. Now, privacy laws around the world, and Australia is no exception. Privacy laws around the world are progressively getting tighter. I think the European Union is probably at the vanguard of that. They've kind of like set the global gold standard for privacy protections, for consumer privacy protections. But I think a lot of other jurisdictions around the world are also following their example. Like in America, particularly, I think California has some pretty strict privacy standards now. Canada, Japan, and Australia. In Australia, we have something called the 1988 Privacy Act, but that's been updated a couple of times with some additional legislation. And I believe that the Australian federal parliament is actually looking at updating this again with amongst other things, perhaps like bringing in stricter penalties for serious privacy breaches. So I guess that one of the things that might confuse a few people is like in the case of small businesses. Okay, if you look at a lot of small business websites that relate to small businesses in Australia, you might not. It might not be apparent that they put a lot of emphasis into enacting privacy policies on their site. And I think part of that is because that within Australia there's actually an exemption for small businesses under which have a turnover under $3 million per annum. Okay, so so this is the good news. If you have a business with an annual turnover less than $3 million, then you're exempt from a lot of the Australian Privacy Act provisions. However, the bad news is that there are certain sectors, and particularly the health sector, where that exemption does not apply.
Right.
So if you're deemed to be a health service provider, and this covers things like GPs, dentists, optometrists, chiropractors, even gyms, even health club owners, they are deemed to be health care providers. In all of these cases, you're really not covered by that exemption. So I think that if you are in the healthcare space, then you do have to look carefully at your exposure under the privacy laws. Um, Now there is something which they added in 2017 called the notifiable data breaches. And what this says is, well, first of all, as a business under the Privacy Act, you have a duty um, to you know to, to provide to protect your client's data um, to a reasonable whatever reasonable extent you can do so. And so they will look at things like like how large is your business, Like what type of data are you collecting? And the Act takes into consideration those things. However, if there is a data breach and the release of that personal data could could cause or is likely to cause serious harm to the individual, then you have a responsibility to, within 30 days, to notify them that that breach has taken place. So serious harm could mean harm to their reputation, or it could mean potential for someone to use that information to commit like data theft, like identity theft. So, for example, if you're collecting Medicare card information from your patients, well, that has the potential to be used for identity theft, doesn't it? So
Yep.
so that's obviously something that's likely to cause serious harm. There might be people who are in particular occupations where their eyesight is critical to the effective performance of their work, like pilots, maybe surgeons. So again, that's something that could have serious consequences. So that's sort of part of the Privacy Act as well. This notifiable data breaches legislation. So bottom line is that you really don't want to be in a position where you're collecting data from your patients, and then that data might somehow fall into the public realm, or or falls outside of your care and protection. So it's a serious topic for those reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. And that relates back to Optus and Medibank Private, and the issues that
Yeah,
they had.
big companies and small companies are they're all facing their challenges around this topic. And I mean, privacy protection is a serious issue, and I think it should be. I think people these days understand that their personal data is something that companies have a obligation to protect.
Absolutely. And practitioners, if we are facing a data breach, it's
Mm.
best to contact Optometry Australia first, and they can help with advice, and so that we can then notify the patients within 30 days.
Yeah, so I mean, so privacy compliance, that's one type of compliance issue that optometrists and eye care professionals have to think about. But I mean, if we take the term compliance more generally, I think that there are other topics that I'm happy to talk about, if you'd like me to, Lee, that cover
Yeah.
you know cover fields besides just privacy. So another one is accessibility. I mean, there it's becoming that's becoming another hot topic more and more. There have been cases where companies have had to settle very large legal suits because their websites were not accessible for people with disabilities. So that could mean like someone who's just not physically capable of operating a mouse and a keyboard. It could mean people who have like visual disabilities. And I mean, like even beyond the the even beyond the legal exposure. I mean, how embarrassing is it if somebody who's got a visual disability comes to your website and they can't actually interact with your own website because because it has usability issues.
Yeah.
That's not a good look. And so, like one of the most common problems I see with websites is like a lack of contrast, even like a lack of contrast between the text and the background. It might be an image in the background, or it might be just like a non-white background, it might be some kind of colored background. So if you're young, or you got 20/20 vision, that's probably not an issue. But if you're someone who doesn't have perfect vision, then that is frustrating. I think that accessibility for all our users is something that we need to consider. There are some tools available that you can use that run like an automated audit of your site, and that can potentially tell you about problems that you have with contrast and maybe other things. Um, so I think that's not a bad start to run something like that. What I would suggest, an easy thing that people can do is simply add a page to your site. You can put the link down in the footer, and call that an accessibility statement. So in that statement, all you need to say is like, yes, we understand that it's a serious issue, and it is part of our goal to make our website as accessible for all people as possible. We maybe not something that we can necessarily do overnight, but we're going to making a commitment to work towards that, and offer some kind of a contact point. So if people do find that they're having difficulties using your site, that they've got some way of getting in contact with you and bringing those concerns to light. And I think just having that alone, removes a lot of the frustration if and when someone with accessibility issues does encounter problems with your site.
That's a great tip, Paul, about accessibility pages, and some of the tools that you mentioned before about checking the website for accessibility and contrast. Are they free
Mm.
websites or paid websites?
Yeah, there are multiple free tools. I think there are some Chrome browser extensions that you can just add to your Chrome toolbar, that you can use. I use an extension. It's called the Lighthouse. I just forget the full name, but it's a lighthouse scoring tool. It's what Google uses. It's the tool that Google itself uses for assessing like the performance of the site, but it also gives you a score for accessibility, and it kind of like breaks down things about your site that could be improved, things that it sees as potential issues. So yeah, if you just go to the Chrome browser extensions, and if you Google that Lighthouse Chrome extension, that's one that you can use right away.
Great. Yeah, good tip. And we can leave a link to that in the description below.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, so just in terms of like if we're adding like additional pages and links in the footer, there are a few others that I think that you might want to consider as well. So terms and conditions, okay. So like it's probably like a boilerplate thing, but it's probably good to have a terms and conditions page on your site that you know just explains clearly some standard operating things about your business. So like for example, if somebody has an appointment with you and or with your practice, and they want to cancel at the last minute, well, what does that mean? How should they go about it? All those types of things. If you can put that into a terms and conditions page, I think that can be helpful. If you're selling consumables online, like for example, if you're selling contact lenses or cleaning fluids, that sort of thing, it's probably good to talk about your shipping policies, like how do you ship those products to the patients. How long can they expect for it to take before the product is delivered? What should they do if they're not happy with the product when they get it? Do you offer a refund? Do you offer credit on future purchases? How does that all work? So I think you can mention that as well. Anytime that we have a blog, or if we have a website that's providing some kind of advice that people may rely on, which ultimately turns out to be to their detriment, I think it's worthwhile including some kind of a disclaimer on your site. And I think anything that comes under the umbrella of providing health advice, it's worth having a disclaimer page also on your site, maybe a link in the footer, that talks about this advice that we're offering should be taken the following caveats. And there are some tools. I was looking at one earlier today that can generate you a disclaimer page based on the type of advice you're offering. So yeah, I think that's worth putting on there as well. So while we're on the topics of disclaimers, I should say that I'm not a qualified lawyer. So anything that you and as far as I know, Lee's not a member of the Australian Bar Association either. So anything that you watch and hear in this video should be taken with that in mind. This is kind of just um, this is kind of us discussing information that's already in the public realm.
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
Avant Law, which is free for optometrists to call up and ask questions for legal questions.
right. Yeah, that's a brilliant resource right there. Yeah. In our first interview, we talked about email marketing. So there are also some laws and regulations around email marketing, particularly when it comes to business to consumer email marketing. In the case of B2B, it's a little bit more grey, but in the case of B2C, there are some very clear laws about how you can go about doing that. And one of the things that is included under that is the recipients should always have the ability to unsubscribe from your list, from your marketing list. So, but if you're using one of the popular email marketing platforms like Mailchimp or MailerLite or ActiveCampaign or any of those, there's dozens of them. They nearly all will offer that because it's a universal thing that email recipients should be able to unsubscribe from your mailing list. And a lot of people, it's my experience, a lot of people, like a lot of marketers, take it take it personally if people unsubscribe from their mailing list. They're like, hey, I'm really only providing value here. Like, maybe I'm offering email with links to my latest blog posts. I really want to help people, but they're unsubscribing. They take it personally. But honestly, people subscribe and unsubscribe for all kinds of reasons. Maybe their circumstances change. And if I take the view that if people are unsubscribing, that they're actually doing me a favor, because the last thing I want to do is send emails to people who just definitely don't want to get them, right? That doesn't help anyone, it doesn't help them, and it doesn't help me.
Yeah.
Because if I'm sending out emails that are not getting opened, then that reduces my quality score. So there is such a thing as a quality score of your email marketing account. And also, in the case of a lot of email marketing platforms, you pay based on the number. Well, there is a sliding scale, but the included in that calculation is how many subscribers you have. So if you've got hundreds of subscribers who just are not interested, then you're paying for those for no benefit. So long story short, don't get upset if people unsubscribe.
Can think of it as a favor.
They're doing you a favor, yeah, whether or not you realize it at the time. So another topic when we're talking about compliance here, and Lee, I think you're pretty well versed in this one, and that is the optometry advertising standards. So my understanding of the optometry advertising standards is that you need to be careful around the use of testimonials and reviews. Is that right? What's your understanding on that point?
Yeah, we do need to be careful about. It's can be a touchy area about reviews. So it'd be great to chat more with you about it and see what
Yeah.
your thoughts are.
Yeah. I don't have the exact wording in front of me, but it's somewhere on the Optometry Australia website. It does say that so testimonials are problematic, because often people might say things in the testimonials which are not well about their treatments and the results and so on, which potentially that could be misleading or not factually correct. So they really want to. So Optometry Australia really wants to avoid that, I think. And so what they say, and again, I don't have the exact wording in front of me, but they say that you should not use patient testimonials on your website. And this even they even have a section in their guidelines which speaks to Facebook business pages. So within the Facebook business page, there is a tab for reviews, and that's a really handy thing for most types of businesses. But in this case, the Optometry Australia said that you should disable the reviews tab within your Facebook business page. And when I looked into that, I was really surprised, because as part of that analysis that we've talked about in the past, I looked at over 150 optometry websites in Australia, and the number was I think something like 47% of businesses have 47% of optometry businesses with a Facebook page had reviews on that Facebook page.
Right.
So it seems like maybe the message from Optometry Australia hasn't quite got out as well as it could have. So anyway,
Yeah.
but I will say though that they also mention that you are not responsible for people who leave reviews on sites outside of your control, or if that review is left in a place that you don't have direct control over, and that includes your Google business profile. So you don't have a direct way to prevent people from leaving a review about your business, right? There's no way of preventing anyone from leaving a review of your business. And in some ways that's an advantage, actually, because Optometry Australia says, okay, well, we understand, that's outside of your control, so we'll let you have that one. Yeah, so that's okay. So Google business profile reviews are okay. Facebook reviews, not so much.
Yeah, good tip. It's a relief to have Google as the number one search engine. It's great that we can have reviews on that platform.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we've talked about this. I think it was last week when we talked about search engine optimization and search visibility in local maps and that sort of thing. Reviews play a big role. They're a big factor in in Google's local search algorithm. So yeah, so it's probably a lucky thing that Optometry Australia has said that it's okay to take reviews on your Google business profile. Yeah, and so also, like, I have seen a surprising number of optometry websites that take the Google reviews and post them on their homepage or post them somewhere on the site. I think if you've got a WordPress site, there's even a way that you can, like, dynamically feed the Google reviews into your website. And again, in for most industries, I would say that's a great idea. But um, Optometry Australia says that you're not really supposed to do that.
Yeah, it's a shame that they just have to stay on the Google business profile.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's another type of compliance. I guess one more that I'll speak to here, and that concerns credit card security. Now, I'm imagining that most practices, are accepting payment when patients come in the door. So they're likely to have merchant accounts.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, most have
Yeah.
merchant accounts through like HiCaps or other systems.
Right. So and that's an important thing. When it comes to accepting payments online directly using your merchant account, there is a whole series of extra responsibilities that fall under something called the payment card industry standards, or PCI standards. And if somehow you fall in breach of those standards, like if some sort of credit card fraud does take place, and it can be traced back to a vulnerability in your business processes, whether that be the technology you're using, your website, or just human error, workflow mistakes, whatever it is, that can lead to a lot of additional administrative burden for you, where you've got to like submit to audits, and there's all sorts of extra stuff and overhead that you really don't want to get involved with. So what I generally recommend to clients is, if you want to sell goods and services online, and you want to accept if you want to accept credit card payments, and pretty much you have to, right, if you sell online, what you're best off doing is using a third party payment gateway like Stripe. Okay, I think Stripe is one of the most popular ones, one of the best ones. So yes, you do have to give them a percentage of the revenue. I think it's like about 3%. Probably varies depending on where you are, but it's usually around that. And you can, that's just a cost of business, in my opinion. But the advantage of using something like Stripe is that within the scope of the payment card industry standards, all of that data processing takes place off your site. So in technical terms, your website never actually sees the credit card number that the patient is using. I mean, I've got websites where I charge my clients a subscription fee, a monthly subscription, and I offer them a service. But I've got no idea what credit card number they have. Stripe has all that information, and I just I just see that the payments are going through, but I don't know what their credit card number is, and I don't want to know.
Yeah.
So so I think Stripe, or some other third party payment gateway, I think that's a good strategy if you are going to offer online goods and services. PayPal is another option. PayPal is also popular. Um, PayPal can be it can be a little bit disorienting for people who've never used it before, I guess is the word, because when somebody clicks on that PayPal Pay Now button, they get redirected to the PayPal website. They don't stay on your website. They go to the PayPal site, and then they complete the transaction over there, and then they get transferred back. So it just introduces a little bit extra friction in the process, which I'm not a big fan of. But if you're a person who has been using PayPal for years, like me, I've got no problem with that. So it might even be worth offering a couple of different payment options. Like Apple Pay, I think. So Square, I think, is another one. So you might want to consider offering a few different payment options if that's what you're going to do. And I should also say that when it comes to data security, a lot of this relies not just on technology, but also relies on having solid workplace procedures in place as well. Like making sure that all of your employees have strong passwords, making sure that people don't write down their password and leave them in silly places that other people can access. All of that. So you know, a lot of data breaches just come down to just really silly things where people have they've given access to their password, which really could have been easily prevented. So I think that's something that you can do and you should do in your practice, is make sure that you've got strong password security protocols in place for your team.
And do you like to recommend password managing apps? Like, is that something that you tend to suggest?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I don't think you have a choice. I mean, I've got hundreds of passwords, probably I think something over 300 different passwords for different for different things that I have to use, and so there's no way on earth I'd be able to remember that many passwords. And so just having some sort of like password manager is the only effective way of managing those things. Google Chrome, I think, does have a password management tool. I don't rely on it. I sometimes use it, but I use LastPass as my password manager. I think there are others around as well. I think Dashlane is another one, and there are others. But yeah, I think that's you're well worth using a password management tool.
Definitely. Yep.
Mm,
Yeah,
yep.
great. Yeah, fantastic. Well, there's been some great tips about privacy, terms and conditions, accessibility, email marketing, and yeah, credit cards and password apps as well. So yeah, thanks so much
Mm.
for sharing these with us, Paul.
Yeah, and if anyone does have some concerns about the way that their practice is addressing any of the things that we talked about today, I'm quite happy if anyone wants to reach out to me, and I can take a look at your site. Again, I stress, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not about to offer legal advice, but I can probably point out some areas where you could tighten up your overall compliance, and I can probably refer you to some tools that you might want to use as a starting point if you do want to DIY a lot of this stuff. So yeah, so you can reach out to me at Optics Digital Marketing. That's opticsdigital.net. And Lee I'm sure has a link in the show notes as well that you can click on to get in touch with me.
Absolutely. Yeah, great. Fantastic. Well, thanks again, Paul.